I'm very thankful to have the opportunity and the privilege to be able to spend some time with you today. I was walking through to find my seat, and I realized that in this audience, I have three of the people that if they outlive me, will be my pallbearers, which I thought was interesting, and then one who would preach the sermon. And I thought, it is good to be among friends. And some of you are wondering which ones are the ones. You'll get a letter about that later. But I love being here with you, and I love that this is important to us. And so I hope over the next few minutes to be able to share some things that might be helpful to you and helpful in what we're trying to accomplish together in life. When I think about what we're doing here, this is not just a gathering of people to share an idea. This is a gathering of people who want to share life. And so to be a part of a community, to be a part of an idea of if we're going to live here together, let's not just live by each other, let's do life together. That's the idea. And so when we think about the future, I've always loved the statement, character is destiny. And I believe that to be true. So the character of our community, the character of what we're trying to accomplish together in life, it matters. And so I want to discuss those things with you. The title is Ethical Leadership in Times of Change and Uncertainty. And so I would like to talk to you about the White House. I'll start now with, that's not true. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk to you about the U.S. Open. Are you ready? We're going to jump in. Fantastic. I also have some thoughts about, so we'll stop there. So that's not what I want to get at. What I want to get at is the kind of people who, when they are dealing with times of change, when they are wrestling with uncertainty, what is it about some people who are able to have clarity of thought during that time? Now, every time that I speak, I try to share this idea real quickly. This is not filler. I think it's helpful to know where I'm coming from. So we use what we call the C3. And the C3 idea is very simplistic, that character plus competence equals consistency. And what you do consistently becomes your culture. And so when I look at, right now we have the beginning of the football season, you hear a lot of coaches talking about consistency. They want to have a consistent team. You got to be able to be consistent out there. And when they're saying that, I'm hearing two different things. One is consistency in the ability to do the job well, and that's competence. But the other part is to not lose heart, and that's character. We've all met people who were 5-star athletes with 1-star attitudes, and they couldn't succeed. And so looking at this idea of consistency, there are two things that we're looking for. One is mindset, two is skill set, and these two ideas are not in competition. But I want to address this because there is this belief that I will hire for competence. And I hope that the person that I find has character, because if they don't yet have it, they can't find it. And I want to address this for a minute before I get too far into this. Because when you look at the idea of neuroplasticity, the whole idea of how the brain works, your brain can learn anything at any time if you choose to learn. And there's this thought that if I don't have character, I can't develop it, or I can't teach it, or I can't be able to instill it in other people. And I would say that that is true in one way. You can't teach people something who don't want to learn. But not only must character be taught, it can only be taught. At any point in people's lives, they can change the way they think. So you, if you could talk to the version of you 10 years ago, would give yourself good advice about how to live. Because you've learned, you've changed. And consequently, when we talk about the idea of character, I don't want us to think of this as something that is fixed, but it is something that is developed over the course of a lifetime. And so to begin with this, I want to show you what we're talking about and then drop into the core of the conversation. Number one, ethical leadership is intentional leadership. Ethical leadership is intentional leadership. About a month ago, I was up in Glacier National Park. If you've never been to Glacier, you should go to Glacier National Park. It is all the way up in the northern part of Montana, right along the line leading into Canada. And so at Glacier Park is some of the most beautiful spots you could ever imagine. One of those is the Going to the Sun Road. That's only opened a few months per year because during parts of the year there are up to 80 feet of snow on top of this road. It's an unbelievably beautiful place. There at Glacier they have all kinds of hikes, places you can go. So we go up there, and I'm with a handful of close friends of mine. So we go up there, and there is a trail that I want to go on because the last time I went on this trail, things did not go so well. This trail is called the Trout Lake Trail. And the last time I was there, I've told some of you about this, I was hiking by myself. And there were several signs that said, "Do not hike by yourself. Solo hiking is discouraged," is what they said several times, with a number of pictures of bears. And they said this is an active area. And they kept saying that. And so I decided, well, yeah, but I'm here. And so I started hiking. And I'm hiking up this trail. And as I'm hiking up this trail, what I'll do is I have these hiking poles. And every little while I'll stop and I'll click those poles together to make enough noise that the bear would know I am on the way. And so I'm going along, I'm doing that, I'm hitting the poles together, and I keep walking. And then as I'm walking, I'm going up this very steep part that has these switchbacks going from back and forth. And as I'm going up one of the switchbacks, I look up, and directly above me, about 50 yards away, is the biggest grizzly bear I have ever seen in my life. And I have walked up on 15 bears hiking. This one scared me. He turned and ran. This was a problem because now he's in the forest and I can't find him. My hike was over. I came back down the trail. The day before, a person had been killed there by a bear, and I thought, I wonder if it's the same one. So I looked it up. They never found that bear. But what they said was the Trout Lake Trail, which I had not done research on before we got there, this is the trail that inspired the Night of the Grizzlies movie because of the number of people who were killed there. This is why you should do things like research. And so my hike was over, I came back down, and it scared me. And so I said to the guys, we're going back to the Trout Lake Trail. We get there, and I've got my pack on, got the whole thing. Here we go. There's this big group, and we're making our way up. Now, going to Glacier in July is supposed to be a place where you can get away from the heat. It was the hottest it's ever been in the history of Glacier. And we start hiking, making our way up. And I had adjusted my backpack differently than I do normally, and I was having trouble with my left leg, and wasn't sure why, but I just was having trouble, lifting it. And so I kept walking along, and I was struggling, and I was, getting tired and sweating, and then I stopped sweating, which is not good. We thought the trail was about 3.7 miles long. Ended up it was 10.4, which again, research is always helpful. But we get to the lake, we turn back around, and we start making our way back up. Now, the elevation change is about 3,600 feet. So imagine hiking to where you are right now, times 10, and that was the up and down of this trail. And I'm trying to get back, but I've got a problem. There's something wrong with my leg. And you know something's wrong when people start saying to you, hey, I'll take your pack for you if you need some. And that's the kind way of saying, we're concerned. Then they had an intervention. They said this: it would be a lot easier to carry your pack out than it would be to carry you out. And the guy who said, what's going on? And I told him, and he said, what's happening is you've pinched a nerve, and he's an orthopedic surgeon, so what does he know? And so give him the pack, and it slowed us down. Now, there were two groups, a lead group and then our group. And we are so far behind that the other group finishes the hike, and they wait for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours before we get there. Now, I'm telling you this story for a reason. As we are trying to get back, there are 4 guys in our group, and one of them says this: anybody want to put any money on the fact that Ken Parker will come back for us? Now, I decided to talk about Ken, not knowing he was going to be here, but Ken is right over here. And we were hiking, and they said, Ken will come back. No one took the bet. So all 4 of us said, Ken will come back for us. And so we keep hiking. And so as we're getting towards the last part of the thing. Now, keep this in mind. As we are walking up, we are seeing all of the evidence of bears. This is an active area. And we have bear spray in one group, bear spray in the other group. But we know that if Ken comes back, he's coming back without bear spray. I turn a corner. And there is Ken Parker with this much water, climbing back up to where we are without ever having been asked. And every one of us knew he would be there. Why? Because when you do life with ethical people, you can make different assumptions. We turn the corner and we see him. And I look at Ken, and this is what I'm trying to get at. As leaders, to be an intentional leader is saying there is a code of conduct by which I will live, even if I would prefer not to. Because that's what it means to be a part of this community. There are a number of people in this room who are the kind of people who would not, you're the kind of people who would have come back. And what are we looking for in our leaders? We're looking for people who are willing to risk themselves, to sacrifice on behalf of the team. So I want to just have a few observations about this. When I think about ethical leaders, they are people who know their mission. They have determined this is the kind of life I want to lead. And when leaders know the mission, then followers have a chance of succeeding. I think about the second person. On ethical leadership is intentional leadership. Over here to my left is Lynn Watson, who I will not make eye contact with for a moment. Lynn and I have worked together for about a decade now. We both started when we were 20 years old. That was how it worked. Lynn Watson is someone that I say this regularly. I do not think it's possible to respect someone more than I respect Lynn Watson. But I remember the day that we were going to work with a company here locally. We had this big program that we were doing. And Lynn walks in and she says to us, she said, last night. And she says to us, it is cancer. Have you ever had one of those watching a colleague do something that causes you to just be in awe of? And I'm sitting back there. Here is Lynn, diagnosed the night before with breast cancer. And here she is. She walks up to the front, never tells the group what's going on. And it may have been the best training day I have ever seen in my life. And I'm watching her, and I thought to myself, I want to be more like her. They have predetermined how they're going to live their lives before the situation occurs. And here's part of the code. At the heart of ethical leadership is a genuine concern about people. There's a genuine concern about people. If you love people, ethical leadership is not possible. You might do something that is legal, but you won't do it at the level of ethical. At the heart of ethical leadership is this, that you look at people, you want to give them a fair shot, to treat them a certain way. That your standard is not just the minimum standard, your standard is beyond that. So when I think about the ethical leadership, is a genuine concern for people. Think about the people that you've known who are truly ethical. And did you notice how we have a state that is capable of this kind of love? But in a time when there's a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, this is the time for leaders to emerge to say, let me remind you who we are. It's not been easy years around here. The market shifts, things change. And it doesn't matter how good of a farmer you are if it doesn't rain. And if I'm in the energy industry, it doesn't matter how good I am at what I'm good at if the price point doesn't make sense. With great people go through very difficult times. But some have given us a model of how to do it. Right here to my left is James Bennett. James Bennett is someone I have a great deal of respect for. When Sandridge was going through a very difficult time, must act in a way respect and watched those leaders agonize over how to make a tough call that was not theirs to make, and made it for them. The extra mile with people. Next one. Norms of an organization, actions of its leaders. And that is it. The ethical norms of an organization are determined by the actions of its leaders. Last summer, I was asked to speak at a college, university I should say, over in West Virginia. West Virginia is a beautiful state. And then crossing over from West Virginia to Ohio, where I was, you have Parkersburg, West Virginia, the Ohio River, and it connects with Marietta, Ohio. Marietta, Ohio, I've told you about before because that's where my people are from. So when this university come and speak here for this program, I said absolutely. I added an extra day onto the program and didn't tell anybody. They had me speak on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but I stayed until late afternoon on Sunday. And the reason I did was because my grandfather, the one I've told some of you about before, who was the postal carrier, the letter carrier, job 1. Job 2, he was the janitor at the local bank. Job 3, he was the janitor at the local church. And the reason I wanted to stay over on Sunday is I wanted to go to the church where he was the janitor Because on Saturdays growing up, Granddad would clean that church, and he would then go into the auditorium and he would turn every songbook the same direction. And I asked him why he did that. And he said to me, this building, see that they're all in the same direction. Maybe it will say to them, this is a place that cares about the details. There must be something important happening here. This was last summer. He died in 1995, 22 years earlier. I had not been to that place in nearly a quarter of a century. So I pulled my little rental car out to the side of that building. You ever go someplace as an adult that seems very different than it was when you were a kid? That place was huge when I was a kid. I pull in and I wait till people start walking in, and then I get out. I walk up to that church building and I open up that front door. And some places like that, you open up that front door and the smell of that lobby took me back. But no one knows who I am. And I'm not there to talk to them. I go to those doors and I open them up. And I stand there by myself. They have new songbooks. But every one of them was facing the same direction. And I guarantee you, they don't know why. But a leader set an expectation through their actions that became the norm. So when I want excellence, there's a price tag for it, and that is I must model it. And I look at that moment, and does it really matter in the big picture that the songbook was turned the same way? Maybe not, but when you don't have a lot to offer, then what you have to offer is all you can give. And what he had to offer was to turn those songbooks the same direction. So I look at the ethical norms. Here's what it comes down to. For you as a leader, people do not... If the words were enough, mission statements would work. So tell me if you would like. Because the price of that is not your intention, it's your action. The ethical norms of an organization are determined by the actions of its leaders. And the higher you go, the more willing you must be to serve others. And why? Because if you don't love people, none of this stuff matters anyway. A few more and I'll be done. Ethical organizations effectively communicate their ethical code and integrate it into all aspects of organizational life. What does that mean? I'm hearing a lot right now that people are saying we're having a hard time finding people. We just need warm bodies. Got to find people. We're growing so fast. We got to do this. And let me be crystal clear here. The growing could very well be lethal to you if you're not hiring the kind of people that understand who you want to be and help you get where you want to go. Now look at this. Ethical organizations effectively communicate their ethical code. What I find is that a number of leaders don't want to be too rigid on the ethical code because they don't want to bind people with it. And what I'm trying to more and more millennials, they're not bothered by it. Matter of fact, they would prefer it. Because they don't know what you mean. And so when we're asking people, what do you look for? What are you wanting? What they're wanting is a place that is clear about what you believe. And so if I'm saying this is how we do business here, this is how we do life, this is our way, not only are they not offended by it, they are desperate for it. Help me believe that working here is going to be a great investment of my life. So if I look at it, we want to effectively communicate the ethical code and then integrate it into all aspects of organizational life. It does not take many bad hires to ruin a good company. Not only is it expensive is expensive if they leave. If someone comes in, it's not a good fit, they leave within 6 months, it will cost you 2 times their salary to fix the problem. That's if you are lucky enough for them to leave. But what I'm trying to get across is that your clarity on what is expected on ethical ideas is not only something that people tolerate, they want it, A. B, if you don't do this, it is going to you because you're, this is a horrible analogy. I was sick last week. Excuse me, I didn't mean to cough right then for dramatic effect. I was almost dying. So I was sick last week, and I had lost my voice, which was hurtful. The number of people who said, just don't talk. This was a great meeting. And I am hurt still by that. But what I found is that, you're sitting there and you don't feel well, and I'm just scrolling through, and I found this National Geographic show, and I'm watching. Maybe you've seen one of these shows. This one was one that I am embarrassed to have watched the whole thing unintentionally. And so I'm going and I watch it, and it is the tallest teens in America. And I think, what did I just watch? Like what? That was a half an hour of my life. But there's this one kid who's 7'8", and he's a kid. Then there's the other kid who was 7'2". If you ever want to watch it, it's there for you. But they said, here's the problem. The problem with this type of growth, if it's based upon some type of disease or some type of issue like that, is that the heart can't grow fast enough to keep up with the growth of the body. If the heart of the company is not growing at the same speed as the number of people you have at the company, it will kill it. Starting with the extremities. And so why do you have to keep the standards high? Because if you don't, the people that you want in your company won't stay. They have options. And the ones that will leave are the ones that can't. The ones that will stay are the ones that don't have good options, if I said that, I don't know what I just said. But you get the idea. So wrapping up. This is both internal and external alignment. In another way, to the customer, et cetera, the people in that company have just been told what is true. And what is true is what's happening behind closed doors. And so I want to make sure that what is being said behind closed doors is what's being said behind any door. Now, I'm not talking about the transparency and issues of privacy thing. What I'm getting at is the tone. For executives, the way that people hear you as an ethical leader is very different than they do other people. For example, when not only shuts them down, it disrupts. me say this. Let me get real close here. The effect of angry leaders is profound. It disrupts everything. So if I'm saying we have to integrate it in all aspects of organizational life, here's the price tag. Once again, here's the price tag. Evidently, grown people don't like to be yelled at. But if in a culture where that has become the norm, they will, because that's what's required. Now, some of you grew up in homes that are very different than the home that you provided for your own children. You stopped a cycle of abuse in your life so that you're to experience what your life was like. For some companies, it's the same, that the people with the power are using their power to make life better for those who don't have it. Now, what is the study, or what are the academic side on this? Look at this. This is relatively new. There weren't a lot of studies on this until just a few years ago, first began, but the study of ethical leadership in times of change. Now, what you find is that when you work in a place where people view the people who work there, the leaders, I should say, as ethical, increased job satisfaction, enhanced performance, and greater organizational citizenship. That is it's just a give, not just a given, it's been proven again and again and again. But what is now being studied is what happens when an organization is going through great change. The impact of an ethical leader is enhanced when there is uncertainty in a company. So what we're finding is that there's better performance in times of change when leaders are seen as fair and it'd be better not to, we'll make a little less, but we'll be ethical. Let me just be crystal clear one more time. I don't think you will make less money being ethical. I think you will make more money being ethical. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to prove me wrong. But if the battle of tomorrow is people, and people prefer to work with people who are ethical, then being ethical seems like a pretty good idea. Here's what is changed. The Generation X, let's say, Generation X, your parents could have stood there talking to you, smoking a cigarette and saying, let me tell you something. You're not going to smoke. You understand me? And Gen X would be like, all right, I'm not smoking. Millennials aren't having it. If you're going to do it, they're going to do it because they're not going to listen to the difference. Does that make? And you've got a whole bunch of millennials. And guess what's coming? Millennials will be dwarfed by Generation Z. And what they want? Here's the crazy stuff they want. They want to go to work and not be sexually harassed by their colleagues. That's crazy. That seems like too much to ask for, really, don't you think? Tell you what, in my family, there was one thing that would cause, and that was if you mama. I don't know the look of rage in my father's eyes towards me often, but almost every time it was when he felt that I had disrespected his bride. Harassment ends when someone says, that's not because you nodded your head in agreement a little earlier when we said that the ethical behavior is connected directly to the actions of the leaders. So what are we asking for? We're asking for more. And here's the thing, the more you have, the more you'll have. More ethical, more opportunity. It changes you, changes the people around you. You know what I'm talking about. Have you ever been invited to something where you felt like you were the person that probably shouldn't have been invited because they were all a lot better than you, and it forced you to up your game? Imagine working in a place like that. That's not how it works, is it? I've told some of you before, my first job, I was 14. My first 40-hour-a-week job, I was 14, became a janitor at the mall, because that's a great job for a teenager, to see their friends at the mall. You know you're cool, you know. I can trump that because I then got the job as the janitor at the high school I attended. So don't complain to me about your life. First day, 14 years old. By the way, that guy right over there, Brian Lewis, is, he and I have been best friends since 12 years old, 7th grade. Now I want to point Brian out because he's an introvert and hates this moment. But I also want to point that out because Brian just moved to Oklahoma from Eugene, Oregon, and I want to welcome him to our state. Thank you, Brian. Glad you're here. Seems like there are a lot of people moving from Eugene, Oregon. That's not true. And so we are glad that you are that one. Now, I knew him at this time. He can verify these stories. 14 years old, went to work for the first day, 6 o'clock in the morning. He walked in, clocked in, and the lead for our little group, he said, it's going to be a hot day. I'm going to go ahead and take a break. Turn the light off. We had these folding chairs. You could lean up against the wall, and if you were kind of the senior level, they had found a couch somewhere, and they would sit on the couch. Half an hour. Around 6:30, they turned that light on. Got up. They had figured out where the manager of the mall, he would always take the same route. So then we would go clean the area that he was likely to drive. Because in his eyes, the place was clean. Then we went to McDonald's for breakfast in the mall. And there were 6 cash registers, but we would all stand in line for one. All of us wearing the exact same red shirt with the maintenance patch. And the reason we did that was because one of the guys had a cousin who worked there, and you could order anything you wanted, and you had to, they'd ring it up as a sausage biscuit. I still love McDonald's breakfast. So what did I learn by 9? How to steal from my employer, how to do the least amount of work possible to get the job done, and how to steal from McDonald's. It was 9. Imagine if I had had the chance to work with my granddad. This is my favorite time of year. Because my dad, being that high school football coach, Thursday nights were always late because he would cut the grass one more time on that field before they'd paint it. You'd have thought we were playing the Super Bowl. They'd worked so hard on that field for those kids because they wanted the kids to have that moment. You know what I'm talking about. What makes someone do things like that? What makes someone work like that? What makes someone do the extra thing like that? It's one thing. You choose to love people or you don't. There's a lot of reasons to be negative right now. It's a virus. Fight it. We do not need more people to identify problems as much as we need people to solve problems. And right now we've got a pretty long list we can start with. And if we run out, then let's go back to problem identification. But right now, it seems as if we've got some work to do. But here's what can help. This state cannot get where we want to go without healthy, vibrant, profitable companies that care about their people. Got to help each other. Got to speak well of each other. Some great things happening in this state, but once you go negative, it is tough to turn that thing around, isn't it? I understand the score. I understand where we are. I'm saying at some point we have to be able to look around and say, if we're going to live here, if we're going to do this, let's choose a different path and ask people to follow. Let's be the kind of people who go back and find their friends in need. Wrapping up, I decided not to write a book until people said, you should write a book. Because we've all met someone who wrote a book that no one asked for. And this, at this event, 2 years ago, somebody came up to me and they said, and I was standing right over there, and they said, well, you need to write one. And so I did. And I want to share the book with you right now. Reach a little bit farther. And I'm proof of it myself. So the book is called Sleeping Giants. And it's authentic stories and insights for building a life that matters. It's a book about those moments in life when you have that awakening. Maybe I could be something. Maybe something could be. So it's the personal awakening, but it's also this. It's the moment in life when you realize that as a leader, you have the obligation and responsibility to awaken this in other people. Sometimes it's that you are the giant that has been awakened, and other times you are the one nudging that giant to stand up and realize what they can be. I just wanted to share it with you. You can't even buy it. I just want you to know we're doing it. And it wouldn't be done if we hadn't had this team. Oklahoma Ethics Consortium is not a nonprofit in the traditional sense, in my opinion. This is a gathering of people that want to do life together. If we had a really, really big company and all of us could work there, that'd be cool, that'd be pretty cool. But we can't and we don't. So this is one of those places where we come together and we have lunch. Not because we can't find something else to do with our time, but because we want to have the kinds of relationships that matter. I used to work in the summers in Russia because that's a fun place to go. The last year I went there, I would go for 3 months at a time and teach English in a town called Dubna. It's about 50 miles north of Moscow. It was a secret city. It's where they created their atomic bomb. It's the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research. And so my students were nuclear and neutron physicists, genetic engineers, and the like. CERN and Dubna work back and forth. These are the people who created the internet with Al Gore's help. And so this group is an unusual We teach English. And the last time we were there, they had a friendship ceremony, which I thought was odd, because I had been there for 3 summers. It seemed like, but the 4th summer, we had a friendship ceremony. This big loaf of bread, it was in a big circle. And in the middle of the bread was a ramekin that was filled with salt. And they all stood there and they said, we would like to have a moment where we recognize a friendship that is being forged. Bread, and they put it in there, into that salt, and they ate it. And then they said to me, this is the beginning of a friendship. But the Russians aren't real trusting people, and so what they were getting at was, if we're going to do life together, we're going to have it's not going to happen tomorrow, that we're going to be happy we have when we get there. So there's a symbolism passing around the bread. We are not trying to gather a group of people to the idea that you're out there all alone. Look around, because that's not true. We're in this together. This is our town. This is our place. This is our state. And we can do something that's going to last for a long time. But it requires us to choose to be positive, requires us to be intentional. Look for someone today. Look for someone today that you can help build up, because there's so much being torn down. You can make a difference. Thank you very much.